Kash Patel is extremely dangerous. We know he's the one they want the most. It's why they have flooded the zone with so many nominees at one time. And the reason they want him is because he wants to seek retribution against Trump's enemies. He wants to turn the FBI into an enforcement mechanism for making Trump a king and for increasing his executive power. And as we see, the courts are holding up some of the worst damage that the Trump administration has already done with executive orders and doing away with agencies like USAID. They've put injunctions on that. But without law enforcement agencies to enforce those injunctions, we may end up with a constitutional crisis. And so it is extremely important that we at least, there is any number of people that would be better than Kash Patel. Yes, still not my kind of person, but Kash Patel is fully loyal to Trump, has no qualifications for that position, and is clearly there to do some dirty work. And so, there's a lot of information coming out, this week that we think we can use in that. But let me go back to like we lost the battle on Hegseth, and Doug, you and I were talking about this as we were thinking about this call. And what do we do with the discouragement? When you lose these battles, when we may lose the one on Kash Patel, but we still want to fight it. We're still going to be faithful to it. But I mean, how do we handle that kind of disappointment? And how do we think about it? Is it worth it to do all this? Is it worth it to get out in 0-degree weather and drive to see the senators in South Dakota?
Yeah, boy, that's really such an important question because I think we're facing in the United States a constitutional crisis. And I know that many of us are facing a crisis of our own constitution, right? We don't even know how we can stand up to this anymore. What should we do? Maybe like you, I've been in lots of conversations with family and friends, one just a few hours ago. Basically, one of them saying, "So are you saying there's nothing we can do?" Like we want there to be a different outcome. And when you care so deeply, outcome matters so much. But the process also matters.
Hmm.
And we talk a lot in this country about there being three branches of government. It's what you learn. There's a legislative branch, an executive branch, and a judicial branch. And then often we refer to sort of colloquially as this fourth branch of government being the press. But I would like to suggest that really the fourth branch of government is the American people.
Hmm.
Fundamentally, we are a of the people, for the people, by the people movement in this country. And everyone who's in a position of authority in the federal government or state governments, county governments, anywhere, they're just American citizens who are in a position that gives them a certain duty and responsibility. But the protection of the Constitution, the protection of law and order, that is an American call. So I hope all of us really feel like we are in this process. We are a part of this process. We are not observing it. We are not standing back simply watching what people do. Unlike the big game the other night, we're not in the crowd cheering it on. This is our country. And we have ways to participate. And it might be that the legislative branch and the judicial branch and the executive branch fail us. That could happen. But that's when it comes to the American people. Now, elections are one way to do it. I run a group called Vote Common Good. We want people to make the common good their voting criteria. And we think that means you couldn't vote for the MAGA agenda. But it's more than just our voting. It's also raising our voices in petitions and in conversations with one another. Look, a lot of us on this call, I can see many of the people in the chat, and I know many of these folks, great people, leaders of varieties of places, religious leaders, community leaders, family leaders, civic leaders. We are the people that have influence. You might not be in a place where you can agree with your senator, or maybe you agree with your representative, but you have more contact with your neighbors, with your friends and your family than they do. You are a person that can raise your voice. And just as your spiritual commitment, if you come from the Christian tradition, calls you to own your own faith and to develop your faith in spite of the circumstance, so does our call in a situation like this. So look, Kash Patel is being asked to represent the United States of America in his job as the head of the FBI. And if you think that's something that he is unqualified for, I would encourage you to tell your senator, tell your congressperson, tell your neighbor, tell your friend, tell your cat, tell your dog, shout it from the rooftops. Whatever you need to do, take off that mute that we often put on in our politics because we don't want to get into it, and share with each other. And look, you don't have to know everything about every position to be able to say about this administration. We know what chaos looks like. You wouldn't run a garage sale the way the Trump administration is choosing to run the federal government at this point. You would not tolerate this chaos in a kid's basketball program, let alone at the federal government. So you can raise your voice about the chaos, about the dysfunction, even if you feel like you don't know. Because look, none of us know enough about all these positions. Some of us are looking at, people being approved for positions. We don't even know what they do. It's obvious to us that we don't know what they do. But we know when the system is un-American. And frankly, Jen, and I'll love to hear your input after this. We have a system in America that is designed to be slow and deliberative. That's how it was set up from the beginning in order to keep a run on the government from happening, in order to keep a minority or a majority from moving with mob rule. It is designed to be slow and deliberative with protections. When those protections and that deliberative, slow process is being set aside in order for some kind of political expediency, that at its core is not the way we do it in America. It is fundamentally an un-American process. And you can talk about that process with family and friends, even if you feel like you can't talk about the entirety of every position and every policy.
That's right. That is so well put. That is so good. Yeah, the position of FBI director was deliberately set for a 10-year span so that there wouldn't be a sort of political allegiance. And that was a reform, I think, of the church committee, which had been put in place after Hoover had abused the FBI so much, including to send it after Martin Luther King and tap his phones and try to destroy the civil rights movement. So we made some reforms then, and those reforms have held us in good stead so that that office is not politicized. And one of my worries, watching how Trump has been attacking churches this week, the Lutheran denomination most recently, is that they will try to silence us again by using the power of the FBI, these law enforcement mechanisms. And so, in the name of our conscience and religious freedom, we will have to stand up to that. And that's why we are so concerned about this particular office.
And look, that even that piece of the story is deep in our American history. Like, we should be honest about the fact that our government has quieted all kinds of communities, especially minority communities.
Yeah.
They have been shut down. They've been put into fear. They have been dominated by our government over our history. So there are some places we can go and some histories we can look at to know how to respond. And many of us find ourselves now joining a larger community of the American experience than we ever thought we would. And it's good for us to recognize that there are some people who have gone before us. So many of the other movements that have taken place in the United States that can be a guidepost are something that people may want to spend a little bit of time doing. Because for a lot of us, that doom scroll that we do where we open up our phone or turn on our computer or put on a TV channel and we just start taking in what's coming, it's so much that our minds can be flooded. But don't let your heart be drowned. Your mind might be flooded with all this information and all of this chaos, but we can find a way to keep our hearts from drowning. And that is something that many communities that have gone before us can teach us how to do and how to learn from. So this is a new position for a lot of us because what Donald Trump is choosing to do to this country is something that, as he likes to put it, we have never seen before. And there's a reason we haven't seen it before, because we don't want it. It doesn't fit the American way. And there are many people who even voted for the man who are saying now, wow, I didn't think it was going to be like this. And if you're in a relationship with someone like that, and I'm pretty sure all of us are, whether it's a neighbor or a family or a friend, saddle up to them and let them know that you too don't think it should be like this. And there's a place to have a conversation about this and to keep your heart from drowning and to keep their heart from drowning.
Super helpful. Guthrie just put in the chat bar, Guthrie's one of our co-sponsors with Interfaith Alliance. They're tracking the administration's attacks on faith communities. And so I think it's important for y'all to hold on to that link, and we'll send it around
Wonderful.
afterwards as we follow up with materials.